Welcome, bienvenidos, benvindu, to the Soccermetrics Copa Libertadores show, part of the SDH network. The only English-language show devoted to South America's premier club competition. I'm your host, Howard Hamilton, the founder of Soccermetrics. After 8 weeks, the group stage of this season's Copa Libertadores is now over. We have the 16 teams who will move on to the serious part of the competition later this summer. In this episode, I'll recap the 16 matches that made up Matchday 6, introduce you to the final 16 teams, and present the bracket for the knockout stage. And we start with, as always, the classified results. And starting in Group A, Flamengo 3, Cusco 0. Estudiantes de La Plata 1, Independiente Medellín 0. Group B, Nacional 1, Coquimbo Unido 0. Universitario 0, Deportivos Tolima 0. Group C, Fluminense 3, Deportivo La Guaira 1. Bolivar 1, Independiente Rivadavia 3. Group D, Boca Juniors 0, Universidad Católica 1. Cruzeiro 4, Barcelona 0. Group B, Peñarol 0, Santa Fe 1. Corinthians 0, Platense 2. Group F, Palmeiras 4, Junior 1. Cerro Porteño 2, Sporting Cristal 0. Group G, Liga Quito 3, Always Ready 2. Lanús 1, Mirassol 0. And Group H, Independiente del Valle 1, Rosario Central 0. And Libertad 0, Universidad Central 1. So over these 16 matches, there were a total of 36 goals scored, 24 by the home team, 12 by the away side, resulting in 10 home wins, 1 draw, and 5 away wins. Now you know the scores, let's do a deep dive into each of the 8 groups. And reminder that these matches in each of the 8 groups were played simultaneously. So I'm going to go through them in a group-by-group basis, compared to what I've done in previous match weeks, concentrating on 3 or 4 matches. So let's start in Group A. In Group A, Flamengo had already qualified. Cusco had already been eliminated, and there was a straight fight between Estudiantes and Independiente Medellín for the second spot coming out of the group. In the first match in Group A, Flamengo defeated Cusco 3-0. 3 goals in the last 11 minutes of the match settled the encounter for the home side. A double by Bruno Enrique, and a Lucas Paquetá penalty. That result really reflected the advantage that Flamengo enjoyed over the Peruvian side over the entire 90 minutes. So Flamengo will advance out of the group in first place. The other match between Estudiantes and Independiente Medellín was much more interesting and provided a dramatic finish. Estudiantes were by far the more industrious side in this encounter played in La Plata. El Dim's best chance occurred in first half stoppage time when they had a flurry of opportunities in front of the Estudiantes goal. That represented by far their greatest move forward over the entire 90 minutes. Yet, as the match wore on, El Dim looked more likely that the team that would get the result that they needed. Keep in mind, they only needed a draw to advance to the knockout stage. But in the 90th minute, Mikel Almondarén appeared for the Estudiantes and scored a goal in the 2nd minute of second half stoppage time. This goal was initially canceled for offside, but VAR affirmed the goal after a long review. This review took about 3 to 4 minutes. The goal was eventually given to a tremendous roar by the home crowd in La Plata. El Dim couldn't muster up anything to gain the draw that they needed in order to advance. And Estudiantes advanced to the knockout stage for the second time in 2 years. For Independiente Medellin's part, they haven't advanced to the knockout stage since 2005. And that negative streak will continue into 2027. Now let's turn to Group B, where Coquimbo Unido had already advanced to the last 16, and all Deportes Tolima needed was a draw. Nacional were hosting Coquimbo Unido, while Universitario were hosting Deportes Tolima in Lima. In Montevideo, Nacional defeated Coquimbo Unido 1-0 thanks to an early goal by Maximiliano Gomez. Tomas Vieira was sent off for Nacional in the first half, but made no difference to the final scoreline as Nacional finished third. In Lima, Universitario reverted back to their disappointing type, in which they were ineffective in front of goal and unable to get the one goal that they needed to advance to the knockout stage. Universitario finished with the fewest goals scored in the group, 5. And keep in mind that 4 of those 5 goals were scored in one match versus Nacional. Deportes Tolima got the point that they needed to advance to the knockout stage. In Group C, we knew that Independiente Rivadavia, the debutantes of the Copa Libertadores, had already won their group, so they had nothing to play for against Bolivar. Fluminense, who were champions of Libertadores just a few years ago, needed a win, plus help from Independiente Rivadavia. They needed a draw by Bolivar or a loss in order to have any chance of advancing to the knockout stage. Fluminense kept up their part of the bargain against Deportivo La Guaira. The two sides shared goals in the opening 12 minutes, but Fluminense were much more clinical in goal, and goals by Hercules and Canobio eventually finished La Guaira off. The second match was much more dramatic. Leo Buca scored the opener for Independiente Rivadavia just before halftime. Martin Cataruccio scored an equalizer for the home side. And keep in mind that Bolivar were home side in name only. They were playing this match in Santa Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia because of political and social unrest in the capital, La Paz. So, Bolivar, as the quote-unquote home team, pressed for the winner, forcing Bocato, Independiente Rivadavia's keeper, to make 3 saves. But right before the end of 90 minutes, Independiente Rivadavia launched a counterattack led by Sebastián Villa, and he was eventually at the end of the sequence in Bolivar's goal area, and he slid home the goal that gave Rivadavia the lead and sentenced Bolivar to a Copa Sudamericana place. Diego Crego executed the coup de grace a couple of minutes later at the end of a well-worked sequence. So Independiente Rivadavia, who had nothing to play for, went out 3-1 winners against Bolivar. Bolivar were knocked out of the Copa Libertadores, and Fluminense sneaked back in. In Group D presented probably the most compelling last day scenario. Cruzeiro were effectively in the last 16, but Boca Juniors and Universidad Católica were in effectively a one-match playoff for second place. Cruzeiro routed Barcelona 4-0. They took an early lead through Mateus Pereira, and they pounded Barcelona into submission in the second half. Goals by Cristian, Sinisterra, and Mateus again, with the 3 goals for the home side in the second half. In Buenos Aires, Boca Juniors had the overwhelming advantage in possession and shots. They executed 22 shots to Universidad Católica's 2, yet the second shot that Católica executed was the most devastating. Clemente Montes had the ball just outside Boca's penalty area. He hit a beautiful curler around Leandro Bray to give Católica the 1-0 lead. Boca Juniors tried to get a foothold back into the match, but their crosses were ineffective. Their passing really wasn't up to standard. Their touches in the opposing penalty area weren't what was required. It was a very disappointing performance for the home side. And Católica, who really hadn't done very much in that match, aside from the one sequence that really mattered, came out 1-0 winners. Boca Juniors were knocked out at the group stage for the first time since 1992. And now we turn to Group E, where Corinthians had already won the group. Santa Fe needed a win, and they needed to score more than Platense to have any chance of advancing to the group stage. Santa Fe defeated Peñarol in Montevideo 1-0, an Alexis Zapata winner in the 12th minute, being the only goal in this match. This match concluded a really disappointing campaign for Peñarol. When Leo Fernandez, their talismanic playmaker, went down to an ACL injury, that was pretty much it for the Uruguayan Giants. Corinthians at home went down 2-0 to Platense. Franco Zapiola scoring a brace. First a penalty, and then a curling chip after a poor clearance by the Corinthians goalkeeper. So Platense would move on to the knockout stage over Santa Fe, who actually got the win that they needed, but did not benefit from results elsewhere. In Group F, Palmeiras and Cerro Porteño had the advantage. Cerro Porteño had already advanced out of the group. They had actually effectively won the group against Palmeiras. And Sporting Cristal needed a win, and they needed Junior to get an unlikely win in Sao Paulo. Palmeiras went out 4-1 winners. 3 goals in 11 minutes of match time broke the game open. 1 goal just before halftime, 2 goals within the first 10 minutes of the second half. John Arias scoring a double for the Sao Paulo side against Junior. Sporting Cristal really had a disappointing performance in Asunción against Cerro Porteño. Paulo Vegetti and Cecilio Dominguez, the last goal scored by penalty, finished off Sporting Cristal. Cristal woke up way too late. They had a flurry of opportunities in stoppage time, but by then the die was already cast for the Peruvian side. In Group G, Liga de Quito and Mirassol had already advanced to the last 16. All that was left to decide was which team would finish in first place. Liga de Quito were hosting Always Ready in Quito, of course, and this was the wildest match of the match week. Always Ready took the lead. Actually, Liga de Quito took the lead first. Always Ready turned it around by halftime and looked like the side that were more likely to finish in third place in the group. But then Daverson, who joined Liga de Quito from Atlético Mineiro, he appeared as a super sub, a similar role to what he had for Atlético Mineiro a couple of years ago in their run to the Copa Libertadores final. And Daverson scored twice in the final 50 minutes to give Liga de Quito the 3-2 win. Lanús, for their part, defeated Mirassol 1-0, assuring that Liga de Quito would finish in first place and assuring that Lanús would finish in third and get that Copa Sudamericana place. Agustín Medina scoring a goal in 20 minutes against a Mirassol side that were really never in this game. In Group H, all of the places were decided. Independiente del Valle and Rosario Central were confirmed for the knockout stage. Universidad Central were confirmed to finish in third, and Libertad were guaranteed to bring up the rear in fourth place. So all that was left to play for was first between Independiente del Valle and Rosario Central. Either were more industrious and were more active in front of the goal. Yet, as the match wore on, it was apparent that either a set-piece opportunity or a penalty kick would be the only routes to scoring for either side. In the second half, Paul Fernandez took down Romero for Independiente del Valle, and a penalty kick was given to the home side. Junior Sornosa converted for Ideve, and that goal ended up being the only goal that Rosario Central had given up over the entire group stage. Rosario Central missed out on becoming the third side in Libertadores history to run through the group stage without allowing a goal. Boca Juniors in 1997, Atletico Nacional in 2016. Both of those teams eventually won the Libertadores in those respective seasons. Ideve ended up finishing first place. In the other match, which was really a dead rubber, Juan Manuel Cuesta goal decided the points for Universidad Central over Paraguay's Libertad. So here are the standings for the 8 groups, the final standings for each group. In Group A, Flamengo finished on top on 16 points. Estudiantes finished second on 9, followed by Independiente Medellin on 7, and Cusco with 1 point. In Group B, Coquimbo Unido finished at the top of the group with 10 points. Tolima and Nacional finished with 8 points apiece, yet it would be Tolima finishing in second because of head-to-head results. They had the advantage in aggregate goals between the two teams. Universitario bring up the rear on 5 points. In Group C, Independiente Rivadavia, the debutantes of this competition, finished top of the group on 16 points. Fluminense, who at one point had only 1 point after 3 match days, really turned around in the second half of matches and finished in second place on 8 points. Followed by Bolivar, who faded down the stretch, finishing with 5 points. Deportivo La Guaira, who were so competitive, but ultimately finished last on 3 points. In Group D, Universidad Católica finished top of the heap on 13 points, followed by Cruzeiro on 11. Boca Juniors were knocked out of the group stage. They finished in third place on 7, followed by Barcelona of Guayaquil on 3 points. In Group E, Corinthians finished top of the group on 11 points, followed by Platense on 10. Then Santa Fe in third place on 8 points, and Peñarol wrapping up a disappointing campaign in South American competitions with 3 points, good for bottom of the group. In Group F, Cerro Porteño finished top of the group on 13 points from Palmeiras, who finished in second place with 11. Then Sporting Cristal in the Sudamericana place with 6, Junior with 4 points. In Group D, there was a tie at the top between Liga de Quito and Mirasol. Both teams have a +3 goal difference, and it would be Liga de Quito who finished in first place because of 8 goals scored over Mirasol's 7. Lanús finished in third place on 9 points, followed by Always Ready on 3. In Group H, Independiente del Valle finished top of the group on 13 points from Rosario Central, who also had 13, but aggregate scores between the two sides meant that the Ecuadorian squad would finish in first place in the group. Universidad Central de Venezuela finished in third on 9 points, and Libertad, the only group in the group stage that failed to earn a point in Libertadores group play. So the following teams are confirmed for the Libertadores knockout stage. These are the group winners: Flamengo, Coquimbo Unido, Independiente Rivadavia, Universidad Católica, Corinthians, Cerro Porteño, Liga de Quito, and Independiente del Valle. The following teams are in the knockout stage as group runners-up: Estudiantes de La Plata, Deportes Tolima, Fluminense, Cruzeiro, Platense, Palmeiras, Mirassol, Rosario Central. The following 8 teams have dropped down to the Copa Sudamericana playoff: Independiente Medellin, Nacional, Universidad Central, Santa Fe, Bolivar, Lanús, Boca Juniors, and Sporting Cristal. So Lanús will get a chance to defend their Copa Sudamericana title, and all these teams will get a chance to go through the knockout stage of Sudamericana, and the winner of that competition will appear in Copa Libertadores the following season. The following 8 teams are eliminated from CONMEBOL competitions for the rest of 2026: Cusco, Universitario, Libertad, Deportivo La Guaira, Always Ready, Barcelona, Peñarol, and Junior. So for those 8 teams, the only route back to Libertadores in 2027 is through domestic performance in domestic competitions in their respective countries. So just 12 hours after the final match in the Libertadores group stage concluded, CONMEBOL conducted the draw for the knockout stages of the Libertadores and Sudamericana. Naturally, we'll focus on the draw for the knockout stage of Libertadores. So I'm going to go through these matches now, first presenting the matches that make up the upper half of the bracket, and then the matches involving the lower half of the bracket. And in these pairings that I'm going to read out, the home team in the second leg is listed second. I'll also list the seedings as well. So starting the upper half of the bracket, in quarter number 1, we have the 14th seed Estudiantes de La Plata versus the number 4 seed Universidad Católica. Joining them in this quarter will be the 9th seed Rosario Central versus the 7th seed Corinthians. The second quarter of the upper half of the bracket sees the 15th seed Deportes Tolima hosting the number 3 seed Independiente del Valle in the first leg. They are joined by the number 12 seed Cruzeiro versus the number 1 seed Flamengo. Now moving on to the lower half of the bracket. And in quarter number 3, we have the number 10 seed Mirassol versus the number 6 seed Liga de Quito. Joining them, the number 11 seed Palmeiras versus the number 5 seed Cerro Porteño. And following quarter number 4, the number 16 seed Fluminense versus the number 2 seed Independiente Rivadavia. The survivor of that tie will face the winner of the tie between the number 13 seed Platense versus number 8 seed Coquimbo Unido. Now this knockout stage draw is really interesting because there are 3 rematches of group winners and group runners-up. Rematches of Group C, F, and G. Now this is not customary in knockout round formats. It's more typical that in at least the first round of the knockout stage, the group winners and group runners-up are kept separated. At least teams from the same group do not encounter each other in the first round of the knockout stage. And in previous versions of the Libertadores, that was exactly what happened. So I'm not sure why that was allowed this time in the Libertadores group stage. It's just not very customary. I don't even think it's all that fair to either side. Interesting thing to observe is that all of these group stage rematches in the round of 16 occur in the lower half of the draw. Mirassol versus Liga de Quito, Palmeiras versus Cerro Porteño, Fluminense versus Independiente Rivadavia. We also have an all-Brazilian clash in the round of 16. That's pretty much inevitable, especially when you have multiple Brazilian teams finishing as group runners-up, multiple teams finishing as group winners. That all-Brazilian clash will be between Cruzeiro and Flamengo. So the side from Belo Horizonte versus the side from Rio. Platense or Coquimbo Unido, we know that either one of those two teams will advance to the quarterfinal round. And when you consider the pedigree or lack thereof that either side has in this competition, that's really extraordinary to consider. And if Independiente Rivadavia get past Fluminense and advance to the quarterfinals, we will see a true minnow, in quotes, in the Libertadores semifinals. And keep in mind that these matches of the round of 16 will be played about a month after the conclusion of the World Cup. So they will be played on the week of the 11th of August, the first leg matches, and the return legs will be played the week of the 18th. So that wraps up this review of Matchday 6 and the presentation of the draw for the knockout stage. What are the big stories? Well, the big story is that all Brazilian teams have advanced from the group stage. So all 6 of them will appear in the final 16. 4 of the Argentine teams out of 6 advanced to the knockout round as well. For the first time since 2014, neither Boca Juniors nor River Plate will appear in the Libertadores knockout round. 2 teams from Chile will appear in the last 16. That is really sensational considering recent history of Chilean sides in this competition. We typically see multiple sides from Ecuador. We usually see at least one side from Paraguay, but 2 teams from Chile in the last 16, that hasn't happened in several years. And those 3 group stage rematches that I already mentioned in the round of 16. So, as a reminder, you can find XG maps, flowcharts, and passing network maps for every Libertadores match on my Soccermetrics X feed. I'm backfilling preliminary round matches. I'm backfilling previous match days. I'll be comp eventually. I also have to keep in mind that there are now posting limits on X if you're not a verified user, but we're going to backfill everything. Matchday supplied by Data Factory Latin America. Got a comment or question about this podcast or about the Libertadores? Send them to my X handle at Soccermetrics. You can also send questions or comments to @SoccerDownHere or to Jason Longshore at Longshoe. This show is also distributed on YouTube and Facebook, and you can follow the conversations there. Well, it's time for the Copa Libertadores and this podcast to fade into the background. There is a certain international football tournament that is kind of a big deal taking place in North America over the next month and a half. But when that circus has left town, I'll be back to share the fallout from that, reorient myself to the knockout stage, and maybe tell a story or 2. This has been the Soccermetrics Copa Libertadores show, proudly part of the SDH network. See you later. Hasta luego. E até mais.